Our reading today comes from the book of Micah, chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams and 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So this summer, your pastors are preaching on our favorite Bible verses. And I love Micah 6, verse 8 from our reading today. What does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Micah 6, verse 8 was an attempt to simplify the very complicated system of laws which the Israelites had. There were not just 10 commandments, there were 622 laws that every person was responsible for. However, if you had trouble remembering all of them, maybe you could just focus on this: do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. What does it mean to do justice? Most often when we hear the word justice, we think of getting even, right? Last year, during a funeral here at Lord of Life, we had 3 cars that were broken into in our parking lot. It's hard to believe that someone would do that in a church parking lot and during a funeral. It infuriates me. Justice for me would be catching that person and then hanging them by their toes. Give them what they deserve. But biblical justice is actually a little bit different. It's not about personal vendettas. When Micah tells us to do justice, it's more about helping to create a society that is fair and just. To do justice is to speak up for the oppressed, to work for equality for all people. It's creating a culture, a community that treats all people fairly. I never thought much about what this Beatles song, Blackbird, was really about. It's just a beautiful song. But it turns out that in England, a slang term for a black woman was the word blackbird. Paul McCartney had been reading about the racial unrest taking place in the southern United States in the mid-'60s, and he wrote this song we just heard. A blackbird singing in the dead of night. Well, it was a person who was not allowed to sing and live freely in the light of the day. The song yearns for a way that this black woman might take these broken wings and learn to fly. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see. The Beatles were singing about racial justice. Now, when I think of justice, I'm reminded of what Hubert Humphrey once said, that the moral test of government is how it treats those at the dawn of life, the children, those who are in the twilight of life, the elderly, and those who are in the shadows of life, the sick, the oppressed, the needy, and the handicapped. How do we treat those in our society who are most vulnerable? Are we doing justice? That's a question for every generation. What does it mean to love kindness? It's interesting to me that in Matthew 25, Jesus says that on the day of judgment, the one thing that you will be judged for is how you have treated other people. He says, I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Those are all examples of kindness. Kindness is at the very heart of the Christian faith. Now, in Eleanor Rigby, the Beatles sing, "All the lonely people, where do they all come from?" And we meet two specific examples. Eleanor, a lonely woman who waits at a window wearing the face that she keeps in a jar by the door. And Father Mackenzie, a pastor, writing the words of a sermon that no one will hear, for no one comes near. Loneliness is about isolation, and Eleanor Rigby and Father Mackenzie are isolated. Kindness recognizes that no one should have to be all alone. While biblical justice is usually done in a larger scale, biblical kindness is very personal. It's face to face. More and more, it seems that we are living in an impersonal world where you don't have to see people face to face. I can go to the bank, put gas in my car, go to the movies, and I don't have to talk to anyone. I can just put my card in a slot. And the pervasiveness of the internet means people are becoming more and more isolated too. You can do all of your shopping without leaving home, and lots of people are doing it. Church attendance is actually plummeting across the country, but watching sermons online is skyrocketing. People are doing more and more things all by themselves. Now, it's hard to be kind when you're not even talking to anyone. It's hard to even learn their name when you're not seeing them face to face. So what I want you to do this week, just try it. Every time you have an opportunity to learn someone's name and to use it, do so. Maybe it's the checkout person at Cub. Look at their name tag and call them by name. Maybe it's a waiter or waitress whenever you're out to eat. Say hi to people that you meet here at church. Be kind. Be kind. Because there are a lot of lonely people in this world in which we live. In the last few days, there were two prominent people who committed suicide. Fashion icon Kate Spade and celebrated chef and TV personality Anthony Bourdain. After hearing the news of these suicides, television news journalist Britt Hume sent out this tweet. He wrote, "Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind. always. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, because sometimes all we have to count on is little help from our friends. The third requirement Micah calls for is to walk humbly. Now, humility doesn't mean thinking less of ourselves. It just means thinking of ourselves less and thinking of others more. William White was a great newspaper man, and he was awarded an honorary doctorate by Columbia University. And at the commencement, a quiet, unassuming man stood right next to him as they walked in the regal academic procession. Mr. White turned to the man standing next to him and he said, "We ought to get to know each other. I'm a small-town editor from Emporia, Kansas. My name is White." And the quiet man next to him replied, "I'm a small-town doctor from Rochester, Minnesota. My name is Mayo." We don't get much humility like that anymore, and it's sad. The best example of humility, of course, was Jesus. He was born in a barn instead of a palace. He lived on earth without a home of his own. The Lord of the universe, on the night in which, right before he died, rather, he took a servant's apron and he tied it around his waist. He knelt before the disciples and he washed their feet. And then the Apostle Paul writes in Philippians, Jesus humbled himself and became obedient unto death. William Barclay wrote about those words saying, it's the greatest and most moving passage that the Apostle Paul ever wrote about Jesus. Jesus humbled himself and became obedient unto death. If the God of all creation can be humble, it seems like we should be able to walk humbly too. Now, Micah asks the question, what does the Lord require of you? And the prophet seems to know the answer to the question before it's even asked, saying what really matters is to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with our God. Those are very literally whispered words of wisdom. My favorite part of the old Tonight Show with Johnny Carson was when he did the Karnak the Magnificent bit. Do you remember that? Again, the music's from the 60s, the jokes are from the 60s. Karnak was a mysterious visitor from the East.
I hold in my hand the envelopes. As a child of 4 can plainly see, these envelopes have been hermetically sealed. They've been kept in a mayonnaise jar on Funk and Wagnall's porch since noon yesterday. No one, I mean no one, knows the contents of these envelopes. But you, sir, in your mystical and borderline divine way, will ascertain the answers, having never before heard the questions. I'll stand over here.
Ruth McKee and Tom Wilson.
Ruth McKee and Tom Wilson. Oh.
What two people are most likely to doze off during this service?
Too much partying.
Sinbad.
Sinbad.
How did Pastor Dave answer the question, summarize the Bible?
Succinct editing, Pastor Dave.
The Bible Belt.
The Bible Belt.
What holds up Pastor Joel's pants?
We thought it was his wife.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
A, B, C, D, E, F, and G.
What were earlier versions of preparation H?
That's a joke from down under. Hey-o!
I hold in my hand the last envelope. May a crazed usher pass the offering plate in front of you 5 times.
Hey-o!
This one's a little different. Do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. What does the Lord require of you? Amen. And let it be.